touch this. You can't touch this. You can't touch this. You can't touch this.
Okay, so we are getting into chapter 5.5 in our notes. This chapter section is covering slope. So let's kind of dive into this, see what you guys think of it. Now, slope, by definition, slope is the rate of change between any 2 points on a line. It is the measure of steepness of a line. So if we were to graph points from a table, for example, kind of like we did back in chapter 2.5 extension, if we were to take points and we were to plot them on a coordinate graph like we see right over here, if we were to do that and we were to look at the line that would be formed when you connect the dots. If you remember doing that, we did it in the extension. We form a line. How steep the line is called the slope. And we can find out how steep it is by looking at its rate of, its rise over run is what we like to look at. The rise over run. And the rise over run, what this means is how much does it change moving up compared to moving over. So let's take a look at this example here. We have 2 points. We'll say we have a point right here, which is, this point is 2, 3. And then we have a point right here. And this point is 4, 6. And we can determine the slope by looking at how much we move on the run, which is going horizontally, and then going up the rise, which is vertically. So the horizontal movement we have goes this much. It goes over 2. Again, this is called the run. And so that means this would be, it ran 2. The rise is how much did it go up or down, really. And went up 3. Again, this is the rise. So our slope is 3 over 2. It tells us how much rise, how much it changed, the change in y over the change in x. That's really what we're looking at. So again, ways of thinking of slope, you can think of it as rise over run. You could think of it as change in y over change in x, or think of it as the rate of change between any 2 points on a line. Okay, well, at this point, let's go ahead and move on and take a look at our first example. So, in order to find slope, let's look at part A and part B. In part A, we're given 2 points. Our first point is at 0, 0. Our second point is at 3, 4. In order for us to find the slope, again, we're going to have to find the rise over run. So the rise over run. And so our rise, well, actually we'll do the run first. It doesn't really matter which order you go in. It just, to me, depends on the direction of the graph and my points. It really makes no difference, though. But let's do the run first. So starting at 0, 0, you'll notice that we're going to go over three squares. And each of these squares is worth 1. It goes 1, 2, 3. So we went over 3, so that's our run. That is our run. And then we went up 4 squares. And again, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So our rise is 4. So in this case, our slope is 4/3. Let's take a look at our problem B. Again, we're doing rise over run. And I guess this time we're going to start with the rise. we're starting off, we have 2 points we're looking at. We're looking at negative 2, negative 2, negative 2. And another point is 4, 1. So, starting at the negative 2, we're going to go up. Oops. We're going to go up 3 squares. This is our rise. Went up 3, so the rise is 3. And then we're going to go over a total of 6 squares. This is our run. So our run is 6. Now our fraction 3, 6 can be simplified. Divide both 3 and 6 by 3, and you're going to get 1 over 2. So our slope is 1/2. Slope of the line is 1/2. Now, something I want you to notice between these two slopes, or these two lines. When we're looking at the line in problem A and comparing it to the line in problem B, which of these two lines looks more steep to you? Hopefully you notice that A's line is more steep. Well, I want you to look at the slope, or the fraction. We have 4/3, and compare it to 1/2. Which is a bigger number, 4/3 or 1/2? It's 4/3. So we can then make that correlation that the bigger the fraction, like the bigger the value of the fraction, the steeper the slope. And we'll see that throughout our time looking at slopes and linear graphs. So let's go ahead and move on to our first couple problems we're going to do on our own. So in these two problems, you are going to go find the slope of each line. That's all you're doing, okay? So take a few moments and see if you can do that. Okay, let's see how you did on these two problems. So, for problem number 1, we have 2 points that are given to us. We have, the first point is at the origin, 0, 0, and our next point is at 5, 2. So, again, we want to have our rise over run. And so, we'll do our run first. From this point all the way over to this point, it went over 5 spots. It's number 5. So our run is 5. And this is our run. And then it went up 2 spots. Again, this is our rise. So our slope for this problem is 2/5. And then looking at number 2, again, we're doing our rise over run. We have 2 points that are given to us. We have a point right here, which is 1, 5, and the other point is 2, 8. Now this point you'd be very careful about. It's kind of tricky the way they've done this. Notice that our points going on the x-axis, the horizontal axis, is going up by 1, 2, 3. It's going up by 1s. Going up our vertical axis, it's going from 0 to 2 to 4 to 6. It's going up by 2s. So each square going up goes by 2. Each square going right to left or left to right goes by 1. So keep that in mind when we go to find our slope. So for our point, when we're doing our run, we're going over 1 square. And that means it went from 1 to 2, so it went over 1. So our run. Our rise went up 1.5 squares. 1.5, well, 1 square gets us 2, a half must get us 1, so together it gives us 3. So our rise, it went up 3. So our slope in this case is 3 over 1 or 3. Either one's fine. I like to always think of my slope as a fraction, and not as a mixed number. I always like to think of it as a fraction because that way you can always think of the relationship between the rise to the run. If you write it as a whole number, you don't always, you may not always think about what that relationship really means. Just something to think about. By the way, which number is a bigger number? 2 over 5, 2/5? Or is it 3 over 1, 3? What's a bigger number, 2/5 or 3? Well, our bigger number is 3. Which of our two lines is steeper, number 1 or number 2? And you can see in this, number 2 is the steeper line. So again, the bigger the slope, the steeper the line. All right, let's move on. In our second example, we're given a table, and it asks you in part A to graph the data from this table. And the table shows your earnings for babysitting. We have our hours, which would represent our X values, and we have our earnings in dollars, that's our Y values. And so we can go ahead and plot these points. So let's just take a look at these points. We have 0, 0. We have 210. We have 420. I'm not going to write all these out, but you get the point that in the table, we're really looking at ordered pairs. And we're going to go ahead and plot these ordered pairs on our line. Now, when you make one of these lines, you can either graph the lines on a coordinate graph that would look like this. However, in this table, you'll know that all numbers are positive. So we only need to have the upper right quadrant. And so we only have to graph the lines looking like this and then plot our numbers. Kind of like you would do with like a line graph. That's actually what this is. We're making a line graph. And then we're going to look at the steepness of the line graph. So the intervals, since these are going up by tens, the dollars, you'll notice that our intervals are going up by 10. It seems to make sense. Now our hours go up by 2s. However, we can go ahead and make these, go every, we can make our intervals for the hours by 1s. We could have made it by 2s as well. Either way is fine. So we're going to plot these points. So again, we have 0, 0 is plotted right here. 210 is plotted right here. 420 is right here. 630 is here. 840 is here. And 1050 is right there. And now, we've graphed this. We've made our line. Part B then says, find and interpret the slope of the line through the points. You can use any 2 points. It does not matter. Any 2 points that lands on this line, you can use those and then simplify it to give you your slope. So the points that the book used here, I'll do this. They did 420, and they did 840. So, going from our point on the left and moving horizontally, we went through 1, 2, 3, 4 squares. And remember, each square is worth 1. So that line, it went over 4 for our run. And then we went up 2 squares. However, those 2 squares are 10 each, so it's really 20. So it's 20 over 4. 20 over 4 can be simplified to 5 or 5 over 1. And so that's our slope, 5 or 5 over 1. Now, more importantly, what does this mean? Because it tells us interpret what this slope means. Well, I like to, remember we talked last section about identifying what the numerator and the denominator mean. Well, for the numerator, we know that the numerator, the Y values, this is our earnings, so this would be dollars. And we know that the denominator, which is our X values, this is hours. So it's $5 per hour. And that's what it would mean if you were to interpret it. So let's go ahead and have you guys try number 3 on, and you're going to look at, again, the same points in the table. And it says, in example 2, use 2 other points to find the slope. And then you're going to answer, does this slope change? All right. So you're going to find 2 other points, not using 420 and 840 together, but use any other combination of points that you like. Okay, you can use 420, just don't use it with 840. You can use 840, just don't use it with 420. And you're going to try to find what their slope is and see, does that slope change compared to the slope between the 2 points that we did in the last example. Okay, so give this one a try.
Now this is a story all about how my life got flipped, turned upside down, and I'd like to take a minute, just sit right there. I'll tell you how I became the prince of a town called Bel Air.
Okay, well, let's take a look to see what you guys came up with. I'm going to give you the 2 points that I use. It does not have to be what points you used. I'm going to do a point right here. I like doing 0, 0 if I can. And I'll go from 0, 0, and I'll use 210. So my run for this first one is going to go over 2. So again, this is my, it's rise over run. So my run is 2. So it went over 2 squares. And then my rise went up 1 square. And with it going up 1 square, it went up 10. So this simplifies to 5 over 1, or 5. Okay. And then let's choose another 2 sets. We could do, again, this is rise over run. We're going to have, let's see, we'll do, how about we go from, we'll just do this. We'll go from 210 and go to 420. Okay? So, in this problem, my run, again, goes over 2 spots. So it goes on the bottom for the run. And my rise goes up 1 square, which again is 10, which gives me 5 over 1, or 5. It's the same thing. And if you remember, that's the same slope we had in the example number 2. So, our final comment about this to answer, does the slope change? No. The slope stays the same. Or no, the slope does not change. Okay, so we're going to move over here. This is our last part of the notes. And it asks us, the graph shows the amounts you and your friend earn babysitting. Now, I understand in your notes, it's in black and white. And in the problems here, it's going to ask you questions about the color. And you have to know which is which. So let's just make sure we understand what we're talking about here. Let's read the questions and the directions. For 4, it says the graph shows the amounts you and your friend earn babysitting. And for part A, it says compare the steepness of the lines. What does it mean in context, in the context of the problem? So you're going to compare these. And then for part B, it says find and interpret the slope of the blue line. Well, let's take a look. Our blue line is the one on the top, right? So this one is our blue. Oops. This one is our blue. And the blue line is our friend. This is our friend. And then the green line is going to be you. I'll just put a U here. So the green line is you. The blue line is your friend. Okay? So You're going to go ahead and do this. You're first going to compare the steepness of the lines and tell us what does this mean in context of the problem. And then you're going to find and interpret the slope of the blue line. So why don't you go ahead and take a moment to do that. We'll check back in here in a few.
Alright, stop, collaborate and listen. I sit back with my brand new invention. Something grabs a hold of me tightly, flow like a harpoon daily and nightly. Will it ever stop?
Okay, let's take a look at this. So for part A, it says compare the steepness of the lines. What does this mean in the context of the problems? Well, if we're looking at the blue line and the green line, we can tell that which line looks steeper to you. Well, the blue line is steeper, obviously. It goes up at a faster rate, right? And so the blue line is steeper. So what does that tell us? Well, let's look. We have to look at what the steepness, what it really means. And so the change in Y, that is our earnings. That's how much money we're making. And the change in X is the hours. And so if we have a higher slope, that means we're earning more money for every hour that we're working. The higher the slope, that means the more Y over X. So it means we're making more money. So in this case, the blue line is steeper. So what this means is your friend makes more money per hour than you. And that's all that we have here. Now for part B, it says find and interpret the slope of the blue line. Well, let's first look at what our slope is for the blue line. Again, this is rise over run, right? And so for our rise over our run, we can use, I guess we can go over 1, 2, 3, 4. It goes over 4, so our run is going to be 4. And then it goes up from 30 up to 56. Now that could be a little confusing, 30 to 56. Sometimes it's easier to look at it from the 0, 0 mark. Let me show you what I mean. Here, again, it goes, oops. So if I start at the 0, 0, I can go over, again, 4 spots. Again, give me that run of 4. However, if I go from 0 up to 28, it makes the math really easy. I went up 28. So my slope, which is 28 over 4, becomes 7 over 1. And again, the 7, the rise is the dollars. And the run, the 1, is hours. So what does it mean when we do this? It means your friend makes $7 per hour. Well, I hope you understood this. Hopefully it made some sense to you. So we're going to be using moving forward. And, well, enjoy the rest of your day and have a good one. Bye.
Who let the dogs out? 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 But the party was nice, the party was jumping. And everybody have enough.